Good evening and welcome to the Canberra AWS User Group for March 2021. I'd like to begin by paying my respects to the traditional custodians of the land we're presenting from, the Ngunnawal tribe, and paying my respects to their elders, both past and present. So we've got a great lineup for you tonight of all the usual AWS goodness that we'd like to bring you through. And then our main presentation for the evening is going to be with Olivia, who's going to be talking to us about all things QuickSight. So let's get into it. So as usual, I'd like to call out our YouTube channel. We have all of the sessions from March last year that have been presented at our user group available to watch on demand in full on our YouTube channel. There's a really fun URL there that's going to be hard to type, so go and search for us and make sure you tell your friends to go and subscribe to our channel too. I'm told that once we get to 100 subscribers, I can change that URL to something that's actually going to be human rememberable. Rememberable, that's a word. So please go through, like and subscribe to our channel. So what's been happening in the world of AWS this month? So far, we have 179 new feature releases and updates that have gone into AWS, which in our usual view of presenting things in visual form looks a little bit like this. So you can see the service teams took a little bit of a break over January and February after the big run through reInvent last year, and are now hard at work delivering new features. So let's take you through some of what's new this month. The first one I want to talk about is a Sydney-specific release, and this is possibly one of the more delicious service names that I've heard of. AWS Snowcone is now available in Sydney. So Snowcone is the smallest member of our Snow family. So you might have heard of our Snowball or Snowmobile. These are our ways of ingesting large volumes of data and providing edge compute to users that is connected to AWS. Snowcone, and I've put a couple of pictures in here to help you get a feel for it, is it's a small, portable, rugged device that's capable of running off of a battery that can give you local storage as well as compute through either EC2 instances or IoT greengrass. So this means that if you've got a scenario where you need to be able to put a little bit of AWS in your backpack, you can do so. You can take it into places like on factory floors, you can be portable with it, collect data, do processing of that at the edge, and then bring it back into the AWS region when you're ready to do so. So these are now available in the Sydney region. Other features that have been released this month that Brian felt was worth talking about. The first one is the AWS Lambda console got a complete redesign. So if you've been a serverless developer at any point over the last couple of years, you've probably spent some time seeing the number of things in the Lambda console growing and growing and growing. And the feedback that we had gotten from customers was that scrolling up and down that page to get to all the individual features was actually really hard to do and not super user-friendly. So we took that feedback and we've completely redone the design now. So this gives us the ability to have some really nice tabs to click through and bring things to a much more usable state that's easier to click through and find the things about how your Lambda function's running. The next was an update for AWS Security Hub. So the foundational security best practices baseline that was already part of Security Hub now has an additional 25 checks that have been added to it. So this brings the total to 115. So these new checks will tie into a number of different AWS services and provide you security guidance and best practices around those services. If you were already running the Security Foundations baseline there, you'll just see these 25 new rules in Security Hub and starting to check and provide you that feedback. If you go and enable it now, you'll get that full set of rules for you. So Security Hub is a really great place to have that single pane of glass to provide information about what's going on in your AWS account from a security perspective. So go and check out that one if you're interested in security. The next one, and I couldn't find an icon for this, which is why it's got a generic AWS logo on it, was our fault injection simulator is now generally available. So this was a new service that we announced at reInvent last year. And what it's designed to do is to let you craft experiments that can manually inject specific types of faults into your AWS account. So for example, customers would say, hey, we really like to mock out what happens if an availability zone goes offline, or if our APIs start getting throttled by particular things. These are things that you can't easily simulate on your own because they're conditions that can only be caused by, like a fire burning down a whole availability zone, or a massive amount of traffic causing throttling in your APIs. Now, you can craft experiments in Fault Injection Simulator that define what you're trying to simulate from a fault perspective, the duration of that, and any alarms that you want to look for that should say, actually, this is bad, we should stop the experiment. So you've got a bit of safety in there as well. So this allows you to sort of walk into the space of chaos engineering, for want of that particular buzzword, where you can go through and simulate actual failures in your environment so you can determine, does your app and your workload behave the way you think it will when there is some sort of event? So this is really great for things like game days and validating that your procedures are in place and your architectures are good, and you can do it all in a really controlled fashion directly from the AWS console. Next is an update for AWS SSO, specifically as it relates to Azure AD. So you've had the ability for a little while now to connect Azure AD directly to AWS SSO to do single sign-on from Azure AD into your AWS accounts. The process for this has now been made easier. There's a new application entry on the Azure AD side that lets you directly connect it to AWS SSO. So this removes a number of the manual configuration steps that you previously had to go through when connecting Azure AD into SSO. So if you're a customer who's already using Azure AD and that's your preferred single sign-on mechanism, now it's even easier to connect that into SSO and control access to multiple AWS accounts, different roles in those accounts, and to tie that back to things like group memberships and even attribute-based access control on attributes that are coming across in that single sign-on process. So again, a really great improvement for security and making it easier to do good single sign-on processes. The next one is a bit of an interesting one. So S3 Object Lambda is a new feature that's released, and this is designed to let you run code in the typical flow that happens when a request is made to retrieve an object from S3. So let me give you an example here. Say I've got an image in S3 and I'd like to specifically resize that image before somebody requests it. So I might have a really large one there and I need to shrink that image before it gets sent out. Previously, you would have written a Lambda function that does that, but to get the image, you might have to put that behind like an API gateway or something to that extent so that your Lambda function would run and return the resized image. What this feature does is it works off the standard S3 APIs. So when somebody makes a standard GET call to an object in S3, your Lambda function runs in line in that flow. You don't need to specifically call Lambda. So this means that you can perform custom logic to change the file and modify it before it's sent to a client. And those people who are calling your S3 bucket don't need to be aware of the fact that there's a Lambda function in there. They just use the standard S3 APIs. So this ties into our S3 access points, and you get a bunch of different ways you can configure this. But this is a really great way to be dynamic about the content that's coming out of S3 without necessarily having to go and change the way that applications are interacting with S3. So a really great new way to bring some more control into that flow. All right, the next one that I wanted to go through was an update for the Amazon Elasticsearch service. And the announcement here is about the release of an auto-tune feature. So this is not going to help my singing voice, but it is going to help the performance of your Amazon Elasticsearch service clusters. So it's Elasticsearch being a JVM-based application. Things like memory tuning and looking at how those things are running are really important to making sure that you don't end up with slow queries or slow writes if you're doing a lot of log ingestion and those sorts of things. This auto-tune will help go through and optimize the memory usage in your cluster automatically so that you get the best performance without having to go and get hands-on and wait for alarms around memory usage to go up and require some sort of manual intervention. So it's a really great way to get more out of your Elasticsearch use in the Amazon Elasticsearch service. The next one is an update to Eventbridge, and this is around support for API destinations. So Eventbridge is essentially, think of it as a fully managed platform as an event bus. So you can send events in from a number of different sources and send them out to a number of different targets. There's already support for a number of different SaaS platforms outside of AWS that can send events into Eventbridge, and you can then do things like run Lambda functions or send SNS notifications as a result of those. Now, instead of just going to AWS sources as targets, you can say forward this event to an external API. So if there's something that is webhook based or uses a HTTP call as a response to an event, Eventbridge can now directly send that for you. It gives you the option to use what we call an input transformer, which will change the shape of that chunk of data that's about to go out in that HTTP call. So if you've got a webhook that needs to be called in a specific format, that transformer is going to help you get that format right before it sends the event through. But this means that Eventbridge is now able to forward these events out to a number of sources outside of AWS, as well as all of the options it's got inside of AWS as well, helping you really bring together event-driven architectures from platforms within AWS, as well as those outside of AWS. And the last one I wanted to talk to is an update to Amazon EFS, our Elastic File System, specifically talking to lower cost storage classes for EFS. So previously, if you've used EFS, you know that we've got our standard EFS storage and our infrequent access tier. Now you've got the option to use the single zone versions of both of those. So EFS by default replicates your data across multiple availability zones so that if there's an incident in one AZ, there's multiple copies of your data stored elsewhere. If, however, you've got data that is not necessarily super critical or can be easily reproduced, you can use these single zone options so that there's a small bump in performance because we're not writing to multiple AZs, and there's a decent reduction in the price because of that as well. So you can go through and further optimize the cost of what you're doing with your file shares by bringing them into a single AZ. You still get multiple copies of your data, it's just that those multiple copies are not dispersed across those availability zones. So this is a really great way to further optimize costs and have more control over how and where your data is stored within an AWS region. Training updates. So as usual, AWS.training is the place to go for access to all of our on-demand and classroom courses. A couple of things that I wanted to call out this month on the training front was there's a new course for AWS Cloud Technical Essentials, and the AWS Advanced Architecting on AWS course has been updated with new content as well. So there's a full list of all the available courses, and like I said, I'm not going to go through them all because we'd be here for a very long time, but they're all available there at aws.training. So if you're looking to learn more, that's the place to go. Lastly, I want to go through some white papers that have been released and updated this month. It was a very busy month on the white papers. I think I counted about 50 that have been either added or updated through March. So there's heaps of great content to go through in our white papers page. A couple that I thought were worth mentioning. So the using Microsoft Power BI with the AWS Cloud white paper got updated. The risk and compliance white paper has been updated. So again, if you're in that security and compliance space, definitely a white paper to be intimately familiar with. Our best practices design patterns around optimizing S3 performance has been updated. So there's some content that's gone into there to support some of these new features that we have in S3. And in terms of new white papers, there was one around creating a serverless content syndication pipeline with AWS step functions. So a really great way to look at using step functions to produce content to be sent out online. And lastly, around using organising your AWS environment for multiple accounts. So again, another new white paper there with some really great practices around multi-account models within AWS. So as always, aws.amazon.com/white papers will take you to all of the good stuff. So on that note, I'm done with the introductory stuff, and we're going to hand over to Olivia to take us through a quick look at QuickSight. So just give us a second to change over the presenter view, and we'll be right back with you.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I am Olivia Carline, so I'm super excited to be here this evening. So yeah, as Brian was speaking about, I'm really just going to be going through our business intelligence service, so Amazon QuickSight. Kind of giving a bit of a rundown on the service and a few of the new features and capabilities that we've released quite recently. So I do appreciate that it's actually quite late in the day, so I'll try to keep this as engaging and as interesting as possible, and I'll keep a little eye on the Twitch chat if anyone has any questions or if they want anything clarified at all. Before I do actually dive into the service, I do want to quickly introduce myself and a little bit of my background. So as I mentioned, I'm Olivia Carline. Initially joined AWS in 2017 as an intern, and then went through the graduate program to working as an associate solutions architect in the public sector team. So alongside Brian, I helped with some of our public sector customers across Australia and New Zealand. And a few weeks ago, I moved into my new role where I am solely focused on QuickSight, which I'm very much enjoying as it's one of my favorite services, and I get to spend all my time working on it and talking about it. It's just my intention with this presentation. So really, I'm going to be keeping it quite high level today, unless anyone wants me to dive a little bit deeper into any of the features that I'm speaking about. My intention really is to just go through what is QuickSight. I'm really going to be talking about some of the various benefits and kind of the differentiators compared to some other traditional BI solutions and tools that exist out there. So this really starts with one of our functionalities, which is embedding dashboards. Basically, it is, as it sounds like. I'll follow that with a bit of a deep dive into the machine learning insights that we have on QuickSight, followed by the final feature, which I am saving for last. Personally, one of my favorite new releases to come out of reInvent, and that is all around QuickSight Q, which really is a great functionality to allow you basically to provide your end users the capabilities to really quickly get very specific insights from your data without requiring this need to build out these really custom or personalized visuals or charts. And then hopefully, assuming the demo gods work with us, I'm going to be giving a really quick demo of what QuickSight looks like within the console, some of the features that I'll be speaking about, kind of what they look like in action, and then really running through that QuickSight queue. Before I actually jump into QuickSight in more detail, I always like to kind of refer to it and speak to it and how it really relates more generally to the AWS data and analytics portfolio. So you hear us say it a lot, but we do offer a very broad and deep portfolio of data analytics services. So this isn't the most updated slide, I'll be honest. There's probably a lot more that I can talk about. But we currently have at least 10 different data movement services. We have over 13 analytics services and over 18 machine learning and AI services. And that is continuously growing. As you just saw Brian mention, through all of the new features and releases, that list does grow very quickly. But when we look at where QuickSight actually fits into this analytics stack, you can see it's up there in the top. But the great thing with this analytics portfolio is we can really easily actually tie these services together to create an end-to-end BI solution. So with that, we're really taking the data from the source on AWS, so whether that's our RDS or inside Redshift or S3, but we can also transform and process it and perform all of these analytics on AWS before we actually make it available to our end users in the form of dashboards that we can present on QuickSight. So now more specifically about QuickSight. So it is our business intelligence tool, but it does actually operate quite differently to more typical BI tools or services that you might be used to. One of the key differentiators is actually we offer the scalable pricing. So like a lot of our services on AWS, you really only pay for what you use. And we've got this concept which is known as pay per session pricing. And with this, you actually only pay for your readers when they're using QuickSight. And this, it sounds quite simple, but it's actually a relatively new concept within the BI world. So traditionally, these systems are often they're licensed. So you're either asked to prepay for your users, either on a one-time license, or you have to go through what's known as an ongoing month-to-month basis. And you're paying for this regardless of how frequently your users are actually using the solution, or in some cases, how they're not using the solution. So what this really led to is some customers would have to make this decision, and it's quite a difficult question you have to ask yourself, whether they need to purchase additional BI licenses. And you have to really make this trade-off between your users. Are they getting enough value from their license to really benefit that cost that you're paying? But with QuickSight, you no longer have to make that trade-off, all due to the fact that you're only paying for what they use. So what this looks like, I won't go into pricing too much, but basically with this pay per session pricing, it's 30 cents for your session. So your session is really defined as 30 minutes, but you also get a max cap for your users. So if you've got a really highly active user and they're reading a lot of QuickSight dashboards, they're on there really frequently, that they're loving the service, that's going to get capped out at a max of $5 per month. So it's the absolute max you're going to pay for a reader. So really what this means is you're able to pay nothing for your users who aren't using the service, to paying a little for your users who are sometimes occasionally in the console and they're understanding dashboards, to, at a maximum, paying $5 for your most active readers. So ultimately, you're no longer having to make that decision between access and cost, and you can really open up that data to your wider organization so your users can start getting insights right away. The next differentiator with QuickSight is that it's cloud native. And so what this means is we actually take care of all of that heavy lifting for you. So you've got no servers or no real infrastructure that you have to manage. So as your users start to become more active on QuickSight and as they're starting to build more and more resources, QuickSight will actually automatically scale all of these resources for you without you having to do anything. And again, I like to kind of compare it to more traditional BI solutions because it's quite different to the previous approach, where typically you might be hosting them yourself or in a third-party cloud, and you're kind of responsible for now managing the load on your infrastructure. But all of that's taken care of for you on QuickSight. So whether you're deploying to 10 users or to tens of thousands of users, you no longer have to do any manual planning or any manual scaling. Really, the third benefit, and one that is kind of, as you would assume really with an AWS solution, is that it is deeply integrated with AWS services. So this makes it even easier for you to start getting insights from your data, whether they're stored in a data lake on S3, or if you're trying to connect to your data warehouse in Redshift, or even data that's hosted in your VPC. It's now even easier to get that connection up and running. But alongside that, this integration with AWS services actually really helps with administrative tools. So when you're trying to configure your auditing or your security and your compliance, you have that peace of mind of knowing you've got IAM guardrails in place and you've got that automatic configuration or the ability to do logging and auditing of your user access and their tracking through CloudTrail. The fourth real benefit that comes with QuickSight is the support that we do provide for developers. So with it, we actually do provide a really strong bunch of API and developer support. So we've got some SDKs that are continuously being iterated and improved upon and expanded with new features and capabilities. But we do also give you quite a few options and documentations to help you on that way. And I'll talk through one of the main use cases of these APIs later on when it comes to embedding dashboards and getting that up and running. But we also do provide you with a developer portal to kind of give you the starting place to begin actually embedding your dashboards and really getting the most value from QuickSight. And then the final factor that I do want to quickly call out is the fact that we do have some really powerful capabilities in the machine learning space that are baked directly into QuickSight. So we do provide you with 3 main insights. So you can easily get started with built-in anomaly detection to start understanding some outliers within your data, or you can begin with forecasting to kind of understand trends in your data and forecast what's going to happen maybe in your retail or your revenue for the next forecasted month or year. And we also provide some auto narratives, and I'll speak about these insights in more detail later on. But really what QuickSight's actually all about at the end of the day is all about these dashboards. So ultimately we are using QuickSight to create dashboards that you can play around with and you can get up and running to really quickly gain insight from your data. But it's really important to note that with these dashboards, you're not getting this static or this frozen view of your data. You're getting this ability to actually interact and to play around with the data, so being able to drill down into the next level, to filter on certain values, and to really create a view that allows you to gain insights that are specific to your personal use case and your particular needs. The other thing to note with these dashboards is they are accessible to everyone on every device. So QuickSight is totally browser-based, but we do also offer mobile applications. So if you want to view these dashboards on the go, on your Android or your iOS devices, you also have that capability to get insights anywhere. And alongside that, with these dashboards, you're also able to directly refresh the data. So what this means is you can essentially just create a dashboard once and then share it with people within your organization. And so instead of giving them these new files every day or sending out a report or even a PDF to let users know what's happening with their data, they can now refresh it whenever they want, or they can access it and know that they've got up-to-date data based on your own schedule. And I'll talk through that when I do the demo. So another important consideration within QuickSight is the fact that it is essentially one product that works for all of your users. So within most organizations, and what we do typically see with our customers within their environments is they'll actually have three main types of users that will be accessing these various analytics applications. So first off, we have our data scientists, and they just really like to get in and get mucking, play around with the data, and really just get hands-on with their own self-service BI. We also have our dashboard creators. So these are the users and they're the analysts who are creating these really great insights and these dashboards and then sharing them with other users within the organization. But our final set of users, so these are our readers, and they're really just interested in interacting with these dashboards. So they might perform a small amount of drilling down or filtering down the data, but they're really just consuming that data. And what we see is quite often that these users will actually end up being split across several different applications. So potentially it might end up being a desktop application for our self-service users, and even different applications if we're trying to host these dashboards for our end users. However, with QuickSight, what you end up getting is you can bring all of these scenarios and all of these users to one central single application. And how this works is you essentially just end up providing these three different users or these three different personas with different permissions to perform different actions based on their job function and their need to access the data. So when it comes to our data scientists, we can go in and we can give them the ability to create and to perform their own analysis and create dashboards and really get quite interactive with the data. But for our end users, we can just grant them the bare minimum permissions to really access the dashboards and visualize the insights. So they won't be able to create anything or build out any analytics, but they'll be able to really get the value from the data in their own way. And when you take this approach, when you centralize all of these users and all of their needs, it now becomes a lot easier and a lot more streamlined to actually manage the analytics and the business intelligence within your organization. So that was a really quick kind of low-level or a high-level understanding of what QuickSight is. But I really want to go a little bit deeper and actually understand how it works and how it connects to the various data sources within your AWS account and externally. So this is just a bit of an overview of how QuickSight works. So on the left here, we have our various data sources that we're trying to connect to. So in this case, we are leveraging Amazon Redshift. So we're accessing some data that we've got stored in our data warehouse. And what happens then is our QuickSight authors can then access this data within QuickSight and begin to spin up these dashboards and these visualizations and these really meaningful dashboards that make it clear what the value of the data is and being able to share that with the end users. So that's what we've got on the right, is we have our three readers who are then able to consume these dashboards without really having to dig around with the underlying data or understand what's going on in the background. And if we focus more specifically on the left section of that diagram, so really the data sources that we're dealing with, we do actually offer quite a few different sources for that data. And I did mention previously the integration that comes with QuickSight to the various other AWS services. So it's very easy to access, your Redshift, your S3, your Athena data. But the service also comes with the ability to connect to third-party databases. So whether that's hosted on AWS or whether you've got some databases running within your own on-premises environment. you're able to actually get that set up and running and connect to those and understand and visualize that data through QuickSight. But in addition to that, QuickSight also does come with the ability for you to connect to third-party applications. So applications such as Salesforce or Jira, you're actually able to now get the data, but keep it within those applications and start to build out the dashboards and the visualizations on AWS without requiring a third-party application or even moving the data onto AWS. Another really key component when it does come to data within QuickSight is this capability, which is known as SPICE. So SPICE is our in-memory engine. It essentially stands for a super fast parallel in-memory calculation engine. And it basically works by using columnar storage and in-memory technologies to run these really interactive queries on large data sets and receive really rapid responses. And this works basically by, instead of having to do a direct connection to the underlying data sources when your user filters or drills down within a visualization, what happens instead is this engine will actually run the query without ever having to go down to your underlying data source. So this means that you're actually taking a lot of the load off your data sources, and your users end up getting far better performance on their data when they start to run these insights within QuickSight. The cool thing to note that as your concurrent users begins to scale out, and as you start to notice more and more users accessing your data, with SPICE, it automatically begins replicating that data set across your fleet. So you're actually able to get the exact same performance no matter what. And it's really all about that scaling that I was talking about earlier. So next up, I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the various capabilities that are within QuickSight. And I want to begin with one of the most heavily used features, and that is all about embedding dashboards. So one of the questions that kind of comes up is, well, why would you not just create your own analytics solution and embed it within your own application when you're building out that app? And there actually are quite a few challenges that come up when you try to take this approach. The first one being, it's actually quite challenging to do so. It's also not a very cheap task. So you end up having to hire developers or these designers to actually build out this analytics solution. Or if your team already has that capability and that knowledge and skill set, you're now taking them off their main and their common or business as usual tasks to really focus on this project and diverting their time to this new solution. It's also become super expensive. So customers are starting to get really used to these new features within BI solutions. So this filtering and this drill down options. And as you start to kind of create the solution, quite often scope will grow out and you want to create this really compelling user experience. But this means the project can stretch out from months to now years to actually get that same level of functionality and insights. Another approach is to just leverage an out-of-the-box solution. But that does come with its own set of challenges as well. So in doing so, it's often not a scalable approach in the fact that you're now typically dealing with a client-server model for these out-of-the-box offerings. So you're now having to manage these servers and scale these servers as your number of users grow. With this model, you often have to deal with minimum licensing requirements. So quite often it will require an upfront investment. Again, it's not ideal, but there are workarounds. But one of the main challenges that we face and what our customers are coming to us with is that these out-of-the-box solutions don't typically have the advanced features that they want. And often they'll realize this later down the track when they're trying to get machine learning capabilities or some other advanced insights. And it just doesn't have the same user experience and you want that you're able to delight your customers with. And this kind of really, these challenges that customers face was really the motivation for this functionality. So with QuickSight, you can seamlessly embed your own analytics, so this analytics portfolio or this analytics dashboard, within your applications without needing to build out your own analytics capabilities. So with this feature, you're actually able to incorporate this branded analytics directly into your web apps or your web portals and websites. And it really provides your users with the ability to view insights without having to change their current context and have that really jarring user experience. As part of this functionality, you also have the ability to personalize the visualization, so these dashboards, to ensure that QuickSight actually does blend in seamlessly with your application's look and its feel. So what this means is you have the ability to design and use custom themes with your own branding, as well as being able to hide certain QuickSight elements and replace them with your own to really ensure that this embedded dashboard has the same flow and user experience that your customers are used to. So similarly, another feature that was announced last year was author embedding. And it's similar to our dashboard embedding, but with this feature, you can actually embed the full dashboard building experience within your applications and your portals. So this will include the QuickSight homepage, the QuickSight search, and all of the data experiences that you're used to and you're able to access on the QuickSight console, but now within your own application. And what this really means is that you actually have a lot of freedom now to perform ad hoc development for every customer request. So you're no longer able to do that. So it actually enables your end users to do this themselves. So they can quickly find insights that are actually relevant for them in a really seamless manner that they're comfortable and they're familiar with. So the next feature I really quickly want to speak to is machine learning insights. So I kind of touched on it earlier, but we do have 3 really powerful machine learning insights that are built into QuickSight, and they really help your users to kind of go beyond that initial visualization feel and actually start to get deeper and more beneficial insights from their data. The great thing to note that with these insights, they're actually all available out of the box. So they're super easy to get started with. All it really takes is a few clicks in the console and you don't have to do any custom development. So our very first insight is anomaly detection. So with this feature, you're able to easily uncover hidden outliers within your data. And you're also able to actually get the second insight, which is forecasting. And this helps you to predict insights in such as business trends within your data. The third insight that we offer is auto narratives. So these can be leveraged to help you tell the story of your data in plain language. So it's actually now easier than ever for your end users to understand the data that is in front of them. I might quickly just skip ahead. So I'll now speak about really the third functionality within QuickSight, one of the ones that I was most excited about, and that is really all around QuickSight Q. So like I mentioned, this came out at reInvent last year, and I sort of touched on it a bit earlier, but basically it's this machine learning capability, and it really helps your end users to actually answer business questions when it might not be obvious when looking at the dashboard directly. And to really showcase the actual benefit of leveraging QuickSight Q, I want to talk through a pretty common scenario that our customers, both on the end user side as well as the business intelligence team side, are probably quite familiar with, and they often suffered through this. So let's say we've got our business user, we've got Amy, and she's looking at these dashboards, and so she's understanding the visualizations. But she has an ad hoc request that she's not actually able to get the insight that she specifically wants. She really wants to dive deeper into something in particular. So in order to actually achieve this and get this done, what she'll do is she'll probably reach out to the BI team and she'll ask for help. And this is kind of the typical flow of conversation that we see. So we've got Amy here. She's our end user. So she's asking our business guru, Dan, over there, to add a new visual to the dashboard that she's accessing. So she really wants the ability to compare sales trends in California to that of New York for this year. And this is a common response from the BI team. So they're going to ask Amy to submit a request. They're going to add it to their backlog. And this is really something that it can't be developed right away. It's going to take some time, and they're going to have to understand the prioritization. But, you know, for Amy, this request is urgent, just like every other ad hoc request there is. She probably has her own stakeholders that are actually breathing down her neck right now, and they really want that comparison between California and New York by tomorrow. But, you know, with Dan, it's just not possible right now. Their workload is probably already overstretched as it is. Often schedules are actually planned out weeks in advance, and there really just isn't the capacity to get these ad hoc requests handled within a few hours. And this is actually a scenario that hits home pretty close for me. I was responsible for managing a dashboard internally, and it was accessed by quite a few users globally. So I remember getting pinged at 2 a.m. a few mornings with a user over in the States was requesting this one functionality that they really, really needed right then and there. And it was just, I had to, you know, get it done that week, push aside my own work or kind of understand, work alongside them to really prioritize and get it done. But, you know, there was a need to have it done right there within a few hours that I often really just couldn't fulfill. But that's kind of what I'm trying to say is this isn't a new challenge. Business users really want their insights done right away. For the BI team, this is just as frustrating because they don't have the capacity to get through all of these ad hoc requests and continue with their business as usual tasks. So this ends up being a task that takes between a few hours to a few weeks to actually get this insight up and running. But to kind of help solve this challenge and this problem that we were seeing, we've introduced QuickSight Q, and it's currently in preview. But it dramatically eases this process of getting insights from your data. So if you are interested, currently you will have to complete a form online to register for the preview. Basically just ask why you are interested in QuickSight Q, what's the use case, as well as the account ID they'll be using, the feature and the region. Specifically because QuickSight Q in preview is currently not available in all regions. So it has not yet been extended to the Sydney region, so there's a few to choose from. But once you are in preview or once it goes GA, it is really easy to get this up and running, and I'll show you how you can do so. But once you have it configured within your account, it's really just as simple as actually typing the user's request into a search bar at the top of their dashboard. Q will then actually respond using natural language processing, and it will respond, spit out a visual that it believes answers the question. The really cool thing to note with QuickSight Q is that your users aren't actually limited to asking questions that are predefined to your certain dashboard or a certain data set that you've got set up. They can really ask any questions that are relevant to their business using business jargon and terminology that they're familiar with. And that's really achieved by the fact when you configure QuickSight Q, you go around and you actually fill in some suggestions and some key phrases that are automatically created by QuickSight, as well as you have the ability to create your own synonyms for what might be a field or an answer that your end users will ask about. The other cool thing to note with QuickSight Q is that the more you use it, the more accurate the solution does become. So once your end user asks a question to QuickSight Q, you'll get a request to either give a thumbs up or a thumbs down if the response was accurate or not accurate. And then this feature then goes on to learn from these user interactions and these feedbacks to actually continuously improve its accuracy and get better over time. So I think the easiest way to actually understand what this looks like is to go about showing it in a demo, which will hopefully work. But I'll first, actually, before I go into QuickSight Q, I'll just give a bit of a rundown on the QuickSight console in general. And I have tried to zoom in here, so please let me know if you want me to zoom in any further, if it's still not that clear on the screen. But this is the first page you'll see when you go into QuickSight and you've been using it and you've got it configured and signed up. Basically, you've got your menu option over here on the left. And that includes this little search option here, which allows us to really easily filter and find our assets, as well as our favorite resources that we've saved, and also recently viewed files to make it a little bit easier if you're continuously going back to a few dashboards or data sets. We also have this concept of folders. And so this is actually another new feature that came out last year. And it is a really great way of managing your content at scale. So instead of sharing the resources at an asset level, so sharing a dashboard with another user, which you can still do, but as you scale out, it can become a bit messy. It's actually dramatically easier to go about sharing resources and placing them in folders, and using that as a mechanism to share your resources across departments or across teams. So like here, we've got all of our sales assets and resources in one sales folder, as well as the same for our finance, to really have everything in one logical place, making it easier for our end users to find their resources. We then have our different asset types within QuickSight. So we've got dashboards, analysis, data sets, and topics. And topics is actually specific to QuickSight Q, so I will talk about it later on in the demo. But we can start with data sets. And so data sets are basically the specific data within our data source that we want to work with within QuickSight. So you can see here we do have some example data sets here in our account. And most of these are actually just really simple uploads into the QuickSight console. But we do have one here that is using Athena as our data source. So if I click into it, you'll actually be able to see, we've got here the ability to refresh our data sets. So we can either refresh these manually, or we have the option to schedule a refresh. So that is a capability that's available for our SPICE data set, so what I was speaking about earlier. And with that, we can choose to schedule this refresh to be either hourly or daily, weekly, or even monthly. But we also have the ability down here to actually configure row level and column level security. So what we're doing with these capabilities is we're actually restricting access to this data set based on column or row values to help add that additional granularity of configuration and access controls. So we can go about creating a new data set. So when we do so, we're actually presented with the various sources that we can use. And if we go to Athena again, I'll just give it a really simple data source name. We'll just call it test for now. And while that loads, we're basically just going to configure the Athena table that has our data. So I'm not actually going to create anything from it, so I'll just choose a random database and a random table. And when we do so, we actually have the option to edit our data within QuickSight. So we can choose to add calculated fields or rename fields. We can also do some really simple formatting, so we can add fields together or delete some fields that aren't actually needed within our data set. But we also have the option to augment our data with SageMaker. And what this really means is we can actually start to run inferences on our data that we've got stored within our SPICE. The next type of resource within QuickSight is your analysis. This is kind of the default one we always go back to. And how I think about analysis is basically the editable versions of your dashboards. So these are where you're configuring and you're adding these visuals, so you're actually playing around. And this is kind of what it looks like in the console. So you've got the data sets that we've added for this particular analysis. So these are the various data sets. You've also got an option to use varying different visual types. So these are the ones we currently have on offer. You also have the option to create filters on your particular visualizations or for the pages. You can also start to build out these insights, as well as create parameters, perform actions, and kind of provide a theme to really customize your dashboard to meet your particular workload and your use case. And then the final component is actually our dashboards. And so these really are the final, they're unmutable, really the versions of our analysis. I say unmutable, but you can actually replace your dashboards as you edit your analysis. But this is really how you go about sharing your insights and your visualizations to your end users, is through a dashboard. So you can go about printing it or sharing it to users within your account, or, as I mentioned, using the folder structure again. And this is a really simple dashboard we've got here. So I'm going to be coming in here as an end user. And basically this dashboard exists to show me customer churn for May 2021. And it's pretty useful. We've got some really good visuals here. So we can easily see we've got 53 new customers since April. Our revenue has increased. We're doing quite good, but we can start to see actually earlier this year, we had 200 customers who left compared to the 150 who joined. But over time, we can start to track that actually this has been improving. And come May, we've only had 155 customers leave compared to the 230 customers who have now joined us. So we're clear we're doing something right in that regard. We've also got other types of visuals here to kind of dive a bit deeper on the churn. So we can see that a lot are coming from Vic right now. We can go down and actually dive a bit deeper into the gender as well. So we can see the biggest proportion is females are leaving us. Again, we can kind of see it based on geography, as well as leveraging a heat map to understand the number of products based compared to the customer tenure right now. But as great as this dashboard actually is, I'm coming at here, and honestly, there's something here that I actually would like to see, and it's not here at the moment. So really what I'm trying to understand is I've got this great revenue here, but I actually want to understand the revenue trend that is specific for Victoria, so my state currently. And like I kind of spoke about previously, in order to get this insight, and assuming I'm not part of the BI team, I would actually have to cut a ticket or send an email to the BI team really pleading my case. This would either take a few hours up to a few weeks depending on their backlog. But with QuickSight Q, we've now got this little search bar up here, and we can actually just type a question about our data. So I really just want to find out I'm just going to type it in. What is the weekly revenue trend for Vic? And assuming everything's working, hopefully this will just take a few seconds for us to get that visual up and running and provide us with that insight. Yes, so there we go. We can kind of see, revenue for Vic by week. Right now, this is how we're looking. So it's not too bad, and it's answered our question right away. So those few seconds, dramatically quicker than what it used to take previously. You can see here we've got this option, did we answer this correctly? In this case, I'd say, it was good. We can provide additional details if we want, but I think this is sufficient for me right now. It's kind of a quick overview for how that works, but really how it works in the background is it's all around these topics. And topics are collections of one or more data sets, and then basically they're meant to represent subject or business areas that our end users can ask questions about. So I currently have a churn topic, and this is really all about churn data, basically what customers are exiting, leaving, as well as some information about revenue and additional insights. So within our topic, you can also see we get insights into the number of questions that have been asked about it, how successful it has been it been positive or negative, are we getting accurate responses? So to create a topic, big blue button that says create topic, we just need to provide it with a name, hopefully one that is more descriptive than test. And then we can either use it based on a dashboard or we can add our data sets directly. But I'm just going to focus in on this churn topic. And hopefully it'll load quickly. But within this topic, we actually have that option, and I was kind of speaking about it earlier. We can actually start to add synonyms to this topic and make it really more intuitive for our end users. So we've got here, this is a data set we're using churn details. For our customer, we might have a synonym in that actually some people from our finance team don't say customer, they say clients. So we can kind of switch it up a little bit and make it more tailored for different users and whatnot. This is kind of how it looks at a high level, and again, you get that insight. And I'm a little bit tentative to show some of the synonyms I was doing previously, as our QuickSight Q is still scanning at the moment. But this is a very quick overview and really all that I had planned to kind of show the capabilities within QuickSight Q. So I might hand back over to Brian to handle the next section of today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Olivia, for that presentation. I definitely learned a few things there, and QuickSight Q has my attention. Anyway, so to wrap up, as we usually do for our user group, what do you want to hear, people? We're always open to suggestions and feedback. So if you've got ideas, reach out to us by leaving comments on our YouTube videos, the chat in Twitch, leaving feedback through Meetup or sending us messages there. There is plenty of ways to get in touch with us. Speaking of Meetup, please submit your feedback. So after attending an event through Meetup, you should get a notification in the next day or so saying, hey, what did you think of the event? We really do take this into account and use it to help make sure that we bring really good content that you're actually interested in. So please, if you take a few seconds to let us know what you thought of it in that feedback, that would be great. Other than that, tell your friends. Friends don't let friends miss the Canberra AWS user group. Word of mouth really is our best mechanism for letting people know about what we do. And we're really here just for the love of the tech and the services and the cool stuff that we get to see. So, if you know people that would find this interesting, send them a link, let them know, and hopefully they'll come along and check out our content as well. So on that note, that's all we've got for this evening. We'll be back again next month. We've got some of the team from 2Pi Software who'll be coming to talk to us about some real-world applications of the Cloud Developer Kit they've been working on. So stay tuned for details on that. It'll be announced on Meetup as always. And thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight or watching this on YouTube. Thanks so much, everyone.